Chapter 15, Queen Velleta. Now, someone had to have created this plague, and they had to have done it very methodically to release it, cause this to be as efficient as possible. They first thought about Callisto, thinking that maybe he had something to do with it, and I think everybody agreed at one point that Callisto is he's just a dog. He's just a dog chasing a car. He just does it because he does it. He has no real rhyme or reason. He's there to do his thing and just be content. He wants to do his thing. The next part of this whole part is not only do we need to know what god creature is going to be summoned and awakened first, and then the order, but we also need to figure out where they are, because again, it's going to be a pretty significant thing to find. Finally, there are things that we need to have in order to get into the chamber to be able to do their trial of worth for the god creatures. These are runestones, again, 12 runestones that are used to open the lair of each individual god creature and allow them to do their trial of worth. Very fortunately, we find out that Queen Velleta, who just happens to be the Queen of Thronehold, actually has all 12 of these runestones. Like, yes, we're in the right place. Maybe we could just convince her to just give over the runestones, because she might not know what exactly they are. Let's try to pull the wool over her eyes so we can save the world, but not tell her that, because I feel like if she knows that everything's happening like it is, she's probably going to be like, okay, well, I'm going to control the runestones so that I get to pick who bonds with what for my territory.
And we've already heard some comments from Zelfrey on how he doesn't approve of Queen Velleta, so definitely doesn't approve of her becoming a god amongst men.
Volke actually, curiously enough, asked for a book that was written by Thiessen Venrover, and I don't think Volke really intended on any particular book in general. I think he just probably wanted to get a little bit behind the scenes of Adelgis's father more than just what he's heard, and this is probably why he asked for a book.
And the book he ends up getting is a guide on different mythical creatures, which is very informative and super helpful just in determining what creatures are out there, what does magic look like, how does it affect creatures differently. So a lot of good information in the book.
And Volke really looks out on this one. The librarian also is like, hey, we have several of these copies. It's not something that is completely and totally one of a kind that we can't lend out. We'll let you have it for as long as you want it, but please return it back in its like original condition, like a respect the book. So first off, don't ever let Zaxxas touch it.
Fire bad.
Yes. When he just leaves them laying on the ground covered in dew. So like, let's leave it away from Zaxxas. They do start to leave, and we find out that Leah and Zelfrey are kind of thinking that Queen Velleta may be behind this. The whole plague getting started, it'd be very beneficial to her, because again, she probably knows what these runestones are for. And again, she has them all, so she could, just like Pokemon, she could collect them all, She could have all 12 of the god creatures for her empire. If someone is after these runestones, that the Frith Guild needs to make sure that they don't get stolen.
And being that they are held by the queen, it would be a master plan to actually go through and pull off a heist of that level. That is Ocean's level thievery right there.
This is where Liette's plans back in the beginning of this book was talking about building up the Frith Guild and really recruiting hard. What other place best than at a tournament, or a place where it's holding a tournament for Arcanist, and possibly to be able to recruit people. So they definitely are in a good spot for recruitment, and hopefully be able to bulk up their numbers, as Liette anticipates having to go through a war and is going to need all the help we can get for the Frith Guild. Volke gets a quick glance through Thessian's book, and the first thing he learns through that book is there are different tiers of mystical creatures. And he does give us a kind of a breakdown on each tier. Tier 1 is basically a puddle, where it would be like a puddle. And he describes these as creatures that are very weak. And they basically are creatures that will reach their final maturity within just a few years. And lo and behold, the first example listed is a will-o-wisp.
10-10.
So again, you kind of feel for, good for Lyle for becoming an Arcanist. You got to give him that.
Okay.
But at the same time, it's a will-o-wisp, like one of the lowest tiers, one of the weakest creatures. Other than just sprites and gnomes. And obviously, these aren't all of the examples, but these are the examples that are listed in Thessian's book. Tier 2 is described as being like a pond, and the creatures will reach their maturity within a few decades. So again, still fairly quick to reach their maturity, but not nearly as fast as the tier 1s like the will-o-wisps. And some creatures that are listed as examples for tier 2 are unicorns, trolls, and ghouls.
And the thing to remember as you go through it is that it is a few decades, but Arcanists are supposed to live for centuries. So it is not nearly as large a portion of their lives as it would be for normal humans.
Right. Like, I imagine that's almost like a blink in their lives for a decade. I guess as long as nothing too crazy is happening,
Depends on the decade. 70s lasted a little longer.
Yeah. Moving into tier 3, we have what's described as a lake. And these are creatures that will reach final maturity around a century. And these are phoenixes, manticores, and leviathans. And Volke draws the conclusion that more than likely nightmares fall into that category, and Lutheria is in agreement as well. I don't know about you, but even if I was a will-o-wisp, I'd be like, nah, man, that ain't right. I'm a tier 4. I'm on the same level as a dragon, okay?
The Zax's equivalent of will-o-wisps.
Yeah. So tier 4s are described as basically the sea. And these mystical creatures will reach their final maturity after multiple centuries, but still might not ever fully mature. And this tier is specifically reserved for dragons only. And finally, tier 5s, those are considered like an endless ocean. And these are, this tier is magic that is so vast that those that bond with them become gods. And these are the god creatures the 12 god creatures that we're trying to find and collect. I feel like there's going to be a lot of Pokemon references coming up.
There is. It is entering its prime. We got a Pokedex now, too.
What's that?
We got a Pokedex now, too. Yes.
And it was given by a professor.
It was. It's...
So Volke is training with Zaxus and Forsyth, and as Volke is very determined to do very well and to win this tournament. Forsyth actually suggests that Volke imagines his terrors like a cloud and to direct that cloud to affect whom he wants. So again, Volke has given that little nugget of information to help him to be able to pass on his night vision. And Forsyth just gives Volke another little nugget of information to kind of shake things up and look at things in a different way and to visualize it like a cloud. So we'll have to see how that plays out for Volke later on. And we end this chapter with going to the actual castle for a meeting with Queen Velleta. We do want to thank you for listening today and thank our editor, Dan Mackison. You can find this podcast on Podbean, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts, pretty much anywhere a podcast is playing. We are on YouTube. We are on Facebook as well. And we do want to give a special thank you to the Frith Chronicles fandom as we get into all of the bestiaries and all of these different mystical creatures through these sections. So they are going to be a huge help. I know once the bestiary book comes out, which hopefully is, again, sometime here in the near future, And I believe they're still taking orders for the bestiary as well. We should be getting more information about these mystical creatures. If you want to get in touch with us, you can send us an email at frithfieldpod@gmail.com, or you can shoot us a message on Facebook or comment on our Facebook page. Scott, was there anything else you'd like to add?
Check back next week for a new next step in the Pokemon journey.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, and I'll see you guys next week.